Thank the gentleman for yielding. I was pleased to hear the gentleman who preceded me in the well-acknowledged climate change and said that GMOs are the solution. I do think climate change is a problem. I don't think GMOs are the solution. Let's go to some of the arguments we've just heard. This is what we've been doing for millennia, hybridization, where you graft a plant onto another plant. I'm not quite sure the last time was when a flounder mated with a tomato plant, but we now have tomatoes that have injected into them flounder genes in order to enhance production. Or the last time an eel mated with a salmon, they are putting eel genes into genetically modified salmon, frankenfish, so they will grow twice as fast as other fish, twice as fast. Now they say, don't worry, they won't get out. And besides that, most of them are sterile. Yeah, right. Okay, so what happens when they do get out and they begin to crossbreed with real salmon as opposed to eel salmon or whatever these things are? Now, this bill would prohibit any labeling. You catch a real salmon, it's a salmon. You present someone with a GMO eel salmon, it's a salmon. Can't distinguish. You don't have to disclose. So that's not exactly hybridization, folks. This thing about being politically motivated, non-scientific, and scare tactics because we want to have it disclosed that GMOs are contained in the product. Well, I didn't hear those arguments when they required red dye number 2 or cellulose or xanthan gum. Why not GMOs? 64 countries require the labeling of products that contain GMOs, not the United States of America. Bastions of democracy like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, they require it for their consumers, but no, we're not going to allow that in the United States of America. Proliferation of labels, yes, that's happening at the state level. And that's states' rights, which Republicans normally for, except when a state does something they don't like, and then they're against it. But there's a solution to that. My bill, which would require a uniform national label, which just simply discloses contains GMOs. It won't cost any additional money since they're having to change the nutritional labels. Anyway, the gentleman have an additional minute?
An extra minute.
Now, we heard a lot about pesticides. This is great. Okay, let's talk about Monsanto and glyphosate-resistant corn. They are using more pesticides today on cornfields than they did historically. More. And they had glyphosate-resistant corn. They dumped the glyphosate on the corn. Don't worry, there'll never be a glyphosate-resistant weed. Oops, they were wrong. Weeds everywhere now, taking over the cornfield. So, all right, let's change that up. We're now going to have 2,4-D. 2,4-D, remember Agent Orange? Pretty darn close. Resistant corn. They're going to dump thousands, millions of tons of 2,4-D over this corn. That is the net result of this sort of forward movement that they're touting as helping us deal with pesticide and herbicide issues. And, oh, don't worry, there'll never be a 2,4-D resistant weed. And if there is, don't worry, they've got an even more toxic chemical. They're addicting farmers to their products and addicting farmers to buying more and more of their pesticides. And we have now seen milkweed wiped out in the Midwest, causing a crisis with monarch butterflies, who are actually a pretty critical pollinator. Most people don't know that, apparently. And that is a result of all this glyphosate and the coming of 2,4-D. With that, I thank the gentleman for the time.
Gentleman from Kansas.
Reserves.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Vermont.
I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman.